Movie for a committee afternoon.
Hi, and welcome back to the committee program. I am your host, Arun Chaudhary, and tonight we are going to listen to and watch another piece of wartime propaganda. This time it is Listen to Britain by Humphrey Jennings, which was released in 1943, so that's during the Blitz, when World War II was probably the hardest on the city of London specifically, and southern England generally. And this film is very different than a lot of what we've watched, which in one case, is certainly in the Frank Capra film we watched, is very rock'em sock'em, planes, dogfighting, all of this. We can do it, patriotism. Then we watched the piece that I had made at the end of the Iraq War, which was very competence and explanations. Then we certainly watched the very defensive film about Japanese internment camps. This is actually a piece of poetry by a guy who knows how to do that. Humphrey Jennings had, at this point in his career, made several very interesting documentaries detailing the work and home life of working class people all across the UK and producing some very interesting films. And he was someone who thought that the British public would not sort of want to absorb that same hyper adrenaline propaganda that the Americans made, and so set out to make the kind of film he did make, which would be quiet, observational looks at things. And so this film has no real narration other than the beginning. It is just a series of verite scenes going from factories to fields to farms, etc. And very famously, there is a concert of German music that's held, during the Blitz, to show how the British people are above all of these kind of hatreds, and certainly are happy to celebrate German music even while they're locked in a deadly struggle with them. Whether or not this really speaks to the British character is certainly debatable, but whether or not it makes an interesting film is not. This is a highly observational, incredibly poetic, and just much different take on what wartime propaganda can be. So let's take a look, let's take a listen, and I will see you on the other side.
I am a Canadian. I have been listening to Britain. I have heard the sound of her life by day and by night. Many years ago, a great American, speaking of Britain, said that in the storm of battle and conflict, she had a secret vigor and a pulse like a cannon. In the great sound picture that is here presented, you too will hear that heart beating. For blended together in one great symphony is the music of Britain at war. The evening hymn of the lark, the roar of Spitfires, the dancers in the great ballroom at Blackpool, the clank of machinery and shunting trains, soldiers of Canada holding in memory, in proud memory, their home on the range. The BBC sending truth on its journey around the world. The trumpet call of freedom, the war song of a great people, the first sure notes of the march of victory, as you and I listen to Britain.
Roman forces programs. Here is the news, and this is Joseph McLeod reading it.
Big mama dolls.
Say I did.
Big electric lamp.
He finally won her.
Love is heard, a discouraging word. And the sky.
Remember Tommy and the Brandon Babe?
Oh, yes, do I?
Finally
You had a great night.
Took them all day to ditch it, didn't
Yeah.
Home, home on the range, where the deer and the antelope lay, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the sky.
This is London Calling. London Calling at the beginning of tonight's broadcasting in the African service.
London is calling you in the 1925, 31,
Aujourd'hui, Monsieur Churchill a donné à la Chambre.
England mit der Sendung für Österreich.
هنا لندن تذيع عليكم باللغة العربية على جهاز GSP على موجة طولها 19
This is the Pacific Service from London, sending you all greetings and wishing the best of luck to those of you listening who are serving in our armed forces, on sea, land or in the air, and in the merchant navy.
Right press, left press again, right hand press, look well up. Lift your chest when you press there, now turn, press again, and twist and press. Swing, press, and stop, drop your arms and look to the ground.
Calling all workers.
Music while you work will be played to you this morning on Rhythmic Records.
Shall see old towns again, round the back of the arches, down the Sunday Glen.
I'm a guy who's never going to roam again once I'm in the old hometown.
By and by I'll see my little home again, then I'm going to settle down
Round the back of the arches, down the Sunday Glen, where the black of the arches never seems to ring back.
That's where I used to be as happy as a mountain Everybody there, a jolly good time. While the band goes, and the jolly see
Okay, so that is 1943's Listen to Britain by Humphrey Jennings. And it's quite good and quite different, right? Like we said, it's these observational slices of life put in with only the diegetic sound, made to connect with us in an emotional way, right? We've talked often on the show about how sound and the kind of real sound and authentic sound is the actual way that we perceive things emotionally, being animals who can listen much better than we can see. I also want to say people in the Ministry of Information were extremely concerned about this film. They did not like it. They thought that it was sort of weak and all the things that you can think that somebody who's looking for more hard-nosed propaganda would think about this film. And were surprised when it was incredibly warmly received all over the country, and especially when they showed it to audiences in factories and in community centers and in these kind of situations where people were living this home front experience. They very openly wept and embraced the kind of idea of this film. And so Humphrey Jennings' supposition that this different kind of film would have a different kind of effect was definitely played out. But even then, the Ministry of Information didn't want to release this to a foreign audience without putting that weird beginning narration where it kind of explains what they're doing. And this was deemed necessary because otherwise, you can look at some of the notes people wrote about it, but they said this would be a disaster if we were to show this to our American allies. This would be a disaster if we were to show it in Canada. This would be a disaster because people would be like, what is Britain doing? What is the ambivalence about the war here? There's not a clear good guy, bad guy. There's just sort of this emotional feeling. But that's not what Humphrey Jennings is trying to do here. He's not trying to explain. Right? He's trying to make you feel what people are feeling in this moment, and that creates a feeling of solidarity. He's not trying to explain how we got here. He's not trying to explain how they're going to win the war. He's not even trying to explain what comes next, because that doesn't matter to the mission of this film. And I think that's what a lot of people who are worried about it missed the point of, right? Not everything has to do everything. Everything has to have a specific mission. These things are little machines that are designed to do something. And also that you start by thinking. You start by having an idea. Right? You could imagine if you already know what a propaganda World War II film is, you've made 5 or 6 of these, that you would immediately just jump in and start cutting it up and getting all the thing. This is an idea-driven film. And I love it. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you soon.
Comite, comitato, comitiet, comiteto, corul, comite, we yantwe, submite, we.
Thanks so much for tuning into the committee program. We know you have many options when it comes to content consumption, and we appreciate your attention to this new season with new episodes on Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and at 10 p.m. Central European Time. You can support the show by becoming a member on patreon.com/the committee program. You can follow committee on Twitter, /committee-pro, on YouTube, the committee program, on Instagram, the committee program, on Facebook, the committee program, and you can visit the committee program company store at tpublic.com, the committee program shop. Special thanks, as always, to our team, Xhevat Kastrati, Fiamma Meli, Jacopo Castelletti, Forrest, Lovette, and committee's deputy director, Julia Doubleday. Look alive out there. It's later than you think.
It's the end of our broadcast day. Thanks for listening. This was the 10th program in our second series. For more global infotainment from the committee program, click on the video screen right or screen left. Please like and subscribe to the committee program on Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern and 10 p.m. Central European Time.